Today I want to help you to maximize the joy that you have in your homeschool while also mitigating problems. Hi, I'm Maddox, and I've been doing a series of videos about how to homeschool, where we go through a series of steps to take before entering the decision-making part of our homeschool journey. In this step, we're going to talk about the 3 Ds. The 3 Ds are difficulties, dislikes, and delights. I have a worksheet to help guide you through this process that you can download for free from my website. But for right now, I want to explain to you what each of these categories are and how identifying them in your homeschool will help maximize that joy and minimize problems. The 3 Ds are areas that you may want to give extra time and resources to. They will help you to choose curricula or even activities that you take part in. I recommend that you fill one worksheet out for each child and identify the difficulties, dislikes, and delights for each of them individually. Let's tackle difficulties first. This is the least fun of the 3 Ds. These are not things that are fun to think about, the areas that are struggles for our kids or that may cause problems for them or where they have extra difficulty. This isn't fun to think about, but this can be really impactful for our homeschool and for our kids individually. When I sit down to identify an area of difficulty for each of my kids, it's my way of saying that that difficulty is not going to define or limit my child. It's my way of saying that I am looking you in the eye of difficulty and you will not catch my child unaware. I am going to help my child through this difficulty. So if we look at it that way, I think it could be very helpful. That's a positive, growth-minded way of looking at a difficulty instead of a fearful way of looking at it. I think this is how we can approach difficulties in our lives and our kids' lives bravely and model that for them. Help them to see how they can address the difficulties in their lives in a brave, growth-minded way. A difficulty can be any number of things. It could be a diagnosis, maybe a health diagnosis or a learning disability. I've had this in my homeschool. We've had a couple of diagnoses. I have a student that was diagnosed with a language disorder, and that was very upsetting to me when I found that out, and the prognosis I was given was it wasn't very hopeful, and I did a lot of crying about it. But when we started homeschooling, I tackled that head on. I identified that as a difficulty, and that meant dedicating some extra time and resources to that area. We hired a speech therapist who came to our home a couple of times a week. She worked with a couple of my kids actually. Besides the time that the therapist spent with my kids, I also spent time with them each day in speech therapy and doing the homework that she gave us because they needed to work on in this area more than just the days that she was with us. I have another student now that needs vision therapy. So that's another line item in my homeschool planner to make sure that each day he wears his patch and has an activity to do to help work his weak eye. That's something that I need to incorporate into our homeschool day and to put in my planner and make sure that it happens. So that's one way that a difficulty can present itself and can affect your homeschool, where you have to dedicate part of your day to dealing with that. The difficulty may be more, serious than that. If there's a health issue with your student or really anybody in the family that takes time away from homeschooling, you'll need to recognize that and maybe do some minimum homeschooling. Look at your local laws, see what's required of you as far as homeschooling goes, and do those things in a way that you can dedicate time to addressing the health issue in your family. A difficulty can also be another area where there's a learning difficulty, but that's not something diagnosable. For example, multiplication facts. Last year, we spent a lot of time working on multiplication facts with my oldest. I had actually planned to spend way less time on math last year, But since he was working on multiplying, we ended up spending way more time on it. I had to let go of the curriculum we were using for a while and instead dedicate time to learning his multiplication facts in a way that fit more with his wiring and doing more games and one-on-one activities. Negative behaviors can also be a difficulty in your homeschool. We've had to deal with a few negative behaviors. We've dealt with disrespect, defiance, even perfectionism, and the effects of that. And you know, this is one of those areas I am sad to say I did not identify as a difficulty as quickly as I should have. I hoped that it would just work itself out. I hoped that my kids would just kind of grow out of those behaviors and it would just magically disappear. But instead what ended up happening is that my kids started forming some really poor negative habits. And since I believe habits create character, that became very much a concern for me. And I wanted to help them through that. So finally, I had to declare this is a difficulty. This particular behavior is a difficulty that needs to be addressed. And it was at that point when I declared that it didn't affect my kids so much immediately as it affected me as the homeschool parent. That's when I started to educate myself in those behavioral issues we were having. I made changes in our homeschool. I identified triggers. I worked on myself, on having more patience and just recognizing that this wasn't something that was going to last forever, that we would work through it. After a year of dedicated effort in this area, I have seen a lot of growth in my kids, and one of my kids especially. You know, things aren't perfect. We're going to have to continue working on this. This is an area that's going to continue to be a work in progress. But I have seen a lot of growth and a lot of maturing, a lot of positive things happening in this area, where if I had just continued to ignore it and hope that it would work itself out, things probably would have gotten worse. Along those lines, character is another area that can present some difficulties. Things like diligence, kindness, respect. You know, as I said, I believe that habits form character, whether it's good character or bad character. I especially like this quote by Will Durant, which says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." And I have found that to be true in my own life, and also as I watch my kids grow and develop better habits, I see that in them as well. Sometimes I have to look at the area of character and see what are some bad habits that are being formed here, because I want to help them work through those bad habits in a nurturing, supportive, loving environment, and not to go out into the world and have the world address that bad habit for them. So character may be an area that you may want to identify as a difficulty. Your season of life may also present your kids or your family as a whole with some difficulties. For example, a pregnancy can affect your days, especially if you had pregnancies like me. I had 3 very difficult pregnancies. I am thankful that I did not have to homeschool through them, but if I did, I would have gone down to minimum homeschooling, just doing the bare essentials. I would have cut out all of the like crafty things we did and electives, all the extra things, and done just what we needed to do. Even life with toddlers, that's a very difficult season of life to go through. Having toddlers running around all the time and getting into things and needing a lot of attention. Potty training, oh my gosh, potty training was miserable in our home for all 3 of my kids. I'm glad I don't have to go through that anymore. So, you know, if you're going through something like that, you're going to want to adjust the things that you do during the day. It could affect your schedule during the day, especially if you have a child who naps and you really want to stick to a nap time. It can affect where you go and the activities that you take part in. It can affect the supplies that you have out when you have little hands trying to get into everything. Other seasons of life that can be difficult are with a move, for example. We did endure a move while we were homeschooling, and since that was expected, I was able to plan for it. I also knew that we were going to have some renovations done on our new house, and that was going to affect things. So I delayed starting some subjects. I adjusted other subjects so we could do some online things. I cut out the crafty stuff because I knew that we weren't going to have all our supplies with us. So that affected the curricula that we used, and also the activities that we did daily and weekly. And then there could be some unexpected seasons of life. Some traumatic experiences, and we have had those as well. We went through Hurricane Harvey here in the Houston area. During our move, actually, we were in a hotel getting ready to sell one house and buy another. That was very traumatic for our family, and we had just come from another traumatic experience, which is why we moved, something that affected my family and my kids especially. And you know, in those times, we had to take homeschooling down to the bare essentials. We didn't homeschool certain days because, not just because we were going through a hard time, but because I had a hard time getting through certain days where we just kind of had to do the bare essentials. We're just not homeschool at all certain days. That's actually part of the reason that we school year round, so that I don't have to be stressed out about, you know, how much schooling we are doing during the year. I know that we're going to get in plenty of school years during the year if we just school year round and take a break every few weeks. And that is one way to help mitigate the effects of going through a difficult season of life, is to kind of just keep things rolling, take the days off when you need to, and be able to take those days off, relax, knowing that you're going to get your school days in. You're just going to have to extend the school year to do it. Now, I just gave you a whole long list of possible difficulties that you can have in your homeschool, different categories of difficulties. I do not recommend that you try to address every difficulty in your homeschool right now. I recommend just picking one or two things to work on and dedicate extra time and resources to that. Now let's focus on something that's a little easier to talk about, and that's dislikes. A dislike is an activity, a subject, an area that your child doesn't really enjoy or that does not bring out the best in him or her. In my homeschool, I had to deal with this our very first year of homeschooling with my oldest in the area of art. He hated art, like he hated it. So since art was not required as in our state as a subject, as a required subject, our first year of homeschooling, we just didn't do art. But here's the thing with a dislike. A dislike can become a difficulty if we're not careful. It can become a stumbling block for our kids. And I saw that happening with art with my son. During that first year of homeschooling, we did some learning, some educational activities in Minecraft. I asked him to sketch out what we were going to build in Minecraft, and it was just like a very simple sketch, and I was trying to guide him through it, but he really resisted, and like he couldn't do it, he didn't want to do it, like no sketch was gonna happen. And I was a little bit shocked by that, and I realized, wow, this hatred of art, this dislike for art has now gone from being a dislike to a difficulty and a stumbling block. So for our second year of homeschooling, I purchased one of the Draw Right Now books, which guides young children through the steps it requires to draw like animals and storybook characters, that kind of thing. And I had him do that just once a week for maybe 20 minutes. And yeah, that was my plan. I thought hopefully by the end of the year, he will have increasing confidence when it comes to drawing. And he did. I'm happy to report my little plan worked, but it's not like all of the process wasn't delightful. He really resisted it at first. He did not like it. He complained. So I would like set a timer and say, you just have to work on it for this little bit. I would sit down with him and help guide him through it. I made a big deal of his final projects. We showed him to his father, put him on the board. And at the end of the school year, I made a little booklet of all his drawings. And at that point, he was pretty confident in drawing. He never learned to love it, which I learned later on as I tried to incorporate drawing more into like history and science. I thought, wow, now that he's willing to draw, we can maybe have some fun with this. And I noticed that he was just going through the motions. He didn't complain a lot, but I knew he wanted to. I could tell he wanted to. And he really wasn't learning. It wasn't delightful for him. It wasn't life-giving for him. He was just going through the motions. So see, that dislike became a difficulty and then went back to being a dislike. It never became a delight. It never became something he loved. And that's okay. There's a lot of other things that he loves to do. So be aware of areas of dislike that become stumbling blocks, and maybe we need to address with our kids. Other than that, you may want to avoid some of those dislikes. Probably the biggest mistake we can make in the area of dislikes is trying to get our kids to really like something that they just don't like. Now, sometimes our kids can learn to like something if they become confident and competent in that area. For example, my oldest, he didn't used to love reading. He used to hate reading, and it's because that was something he was not naturally interested in. And so I had to really work hard at getting him to competence in reading. Once he became a fluent reader, he enjoyed it much more and found like a genre of books that he likes and really enjoys reading. It's never going to be one of his great loves, but he likes it now a whole lot more than he did. I would no longer put reading in the category of dislike like I used to. But that's not always going to happen. Sometimes you just don't like something. And I feel a way that we can respect our kids is by accepting that they're not maybe going to like everything that we like, and that's okay. Now for the fun part, the delights. Delights are the things that are life-giving to our kids, the things that put a smile on their face, that bring a sense of peace and contentment to them and just happiness and joy. They don't have to be areas that they're good in. I know I like things that I'm not good at. I like playing games. I'm not really good at playing games. I played Jenga with my son today. He beat me easily. But still, it's something that I enjoy. So your kids may have delights that they aren't necessarily good at, but just things that make them happy. And that's what we're looking for something that brings a sweet smile to their face and is life-giving to them. For example, my oldest really likes playing Minecraft. And so I've tried to incorporate Minecraft into his schooling in different ways. He did not love the process of learning how to read. He really hated dealing with sight words. So when he was in first, second grade, we built sight words in Minecraft. I've incorporated it in other ways. I noticed that even when he didn't like to read, if he got a Minecraft book, even a Minecraft book that was several years ahead in reading level, he would sit and try to work through that Minecraft book. It was something that made him want to do the reading, when normally if I'd say, hey, this is a great book, let's sit and read it together, he'd be like, nah, I'd rather do anything else. But when it came to Minecraft, he really loved getting Minecraft books. So look for those types of things, the things that just bring a smile to your kids' faces, and look for a way to incorporate them into your days. For my youngest, while my oldest hates art and doesn't love drawing, my youngest loves to draw. That is life-giving to him. He comes up with a lot of ideas when it comes to drawing and just, creative endeavors, and he initiates them on his own. Start to finish, he does a lot of little projects on his own, just ideas that come to his head. So for kindergarten next year, even though my oldest is not interested in an art curriculum, my youngest, I'm going to look for something for him to do, some kind of art curriculum for him to do, because that will bring a lot of delight to his homeschool, to his day, to just the whole homeschool experience, and give him some of those wonderful childhood memories that I really want all of my kids to have. Besides looking for subjects or activities that are delightful to your kids and are life-giving to them, consider their learning environment and how you can make that delightful for them. Many homeschoolers love to do school around the kitchen table. That's life-giving to them, that feels very homey and cozy to them. For my family, we were a little different. My oldest actually went to kindergarten in a public school, and he really liked his classroom. His teacher did a good job of decorating it and making it fun. He would talk about how much he liked that classroom. Even though he didn't love school in general, he really liked the classroom. So when we started homeschooling, I determined to give him a delightful learning environment at home too. We have a dedicated schoolroom, so I work at putting little whimsical fun touches in the schoolroom that make my kids happy, and they love it. They love having a schoolroom. They love having a whiteboard to draw on. They love having their own desks and their own work areas, their own storage. They love seeing their names on things. They love all of those things, and they talk about them. Doing schoolwork outside has also been a delightful learning environment for us. We have a picnic table in the back next to the playscape where we've done schoolwork. We also have another table in the carport so that like my oldest or my older two can do some schoolwork there while my youngest plays, and then they get up and have a play break and play on the driveway. We have a blanket that we spread on the grass sometimes for reading or a little bit of schoolwork. We've done schoolwork on the front porch in rocking chairs. That has been very delightful for us. So just considering the learning environment you have in your home, what's delightful for your kids, and even looking outside. Some families like to go to the park sometimes to do schoolwork or to the library. That can bring a lot of delight to your homeschool. But also be aware of what's actually delightful for your kids, because what's delightful for the homeschool parent or for some kids of the family may not be delightful to others. For example, we have loved doing schoolwork outside. In our second year of homeschooling in the spring, we started going outside to do schoolwork pretty much every day. We'd spread a blanket and do our schoolwork there. But since we live in Texas, spring started turning into summer and it got much hotter. One of my boys is very hot-natured, so as the temperature got hotter outside, he became more miserable. He also has blue eyes, which are very sensitive to the sun, which I didn't realize because I have brown eyes. My husband had to clue me in on that. So while I thought being outside during that time of year would be delightful and we were going to continue that delightful atmosphere outside, it ended up being really miserable for one of my boys. It was not delightful for him anymore. And I'm sad to say I pushed it longer than I should have until I finally realized it is too hot for him to be doing schoolwork outside. We're just going to have to take it inside and wait until the autumn for things to cool down to try that outdoor schooling again. The same may be true of doing schoolwork inside. Maybe many family members find it cozy to do schoolwork around the kitchen table, but then there's that one student that can't handle that, that's very distracted by all the noise and the activity and really just wants some quiet and some time to himself and does not enjoy that kitchen table or schoolroom environment where all the activity is happening. So what's very life-giving to some members of the family can feel very oppressive to one member of the family. So we have to be very careful to be aware of what is actually delightful and not make assumptions based on our own preferences or based on the preferences of some of our other kids. Be aware of what's actually delightful for each student. So jump on over to my website, download this worksheet, print one copy out for each of your kids so you can identify difficulties, dislikes, and delights for each of them and put them in your homeschool binder. If you're interested in more content about how to homeschool and how to prepare to homeschool, check out the playlist that I have linked over here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.